I think social media has damaged a lot of people's brains.
So here's an idea that really pisses in my cornflakes. NASA faked the moon landings. Now I'm sure you've heard this before, but have you ever wondered where this conspiracy theory came from? Did it come from one of the 400,000 people who worked in the Apollo program? Did it come from a jealous astronaut who just wanted to walk on the moon first? Or did it come from somebody who had no idea what he was talking about because he had no experience in rocketry, engineering, maths, or science? The correct answer, of course, is from somebody who had no idea what he was talking about. Now, the earliest and the most influential source of the moon landing conspiracy theory seems to come from a book called We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 Billion Swindle, which was a self-published waste of paper by a guy named Bill Casing, a former US Navy officer with a Bachelor of Arts in English. So, the Navy, the maritime service branch of the US Armed Forces, not the lunar branch, not the space branch, not the Guardians of the Galaxy branch, the maritime branch. Well, okay then, but what did Navy man Bill Casing know about the moon landings then? Nothing. He had no knowledge of rockets or even technical writing. But despite this lack of qualifications, he was still hired as a senior technical writer by Rocketdyne, the company that NASA outsourced to build the F-1 engines used on the Saturn V rockets. Now, just to be clear about what this guy was hired to do, a technical writer's job is basically to take complex information and then explain it simply to a general audience. And keep in mind that in this case, we are literally talking about rocket science. Well, anyway, he was hired in 1956, before JFK made his famous speech about going to the moon, before people were even sent into space, before the first satellite Sputnik was even launched into space. So, that's also something to keep in mind here. Then about 6 or 7 years later, sometime around 1962-1963, according to his own daughter, Bill Casing quit Rocketdyne and he went off to go be a marketing executive for dental products. And all the while, he did not go out of his way to tell anybody that there was a grand conspiracy by NASA and the government that they were going to hoax the moon landings. Then, in 1969, about 6 years after Bill Casing left Rocketdyne, Apollo 11 landed on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It's still considered one of the most incredible things that have ever happened and one of the greatest achievements in all mankind. But still, at the time, Bill Casing said nothing about it. He didn't go on Johnny Carson to say, I have proof that these motherfuckers faked it. He just kept quiet until everybody started losing their minds in the early 1970s. Now, as we're going to see in this video, context is very important. So when it comes to the moon landing conspiracy theory, I do understand where this general distrust and skepticism comes from. Fortunately though, in most cases, we don't just have to rely on what people tell us. In a case like the moon landing, we can turn to actual evidence to prove that it happened. And since it is rocket science, I think that asking questions is fine. Where the problem comes in is willfully dismissing all of that evidence because it doesn't fit what you want to believe. That is called delusion. Now, there's a website that explained how this shit started quite nicely. It's called The Conversation, and according to The Conversation, quote, Bill Casing's conspiracy theory took hold in mid-1970s America due to a wider crisis of trust in the country at the time. In 1971, so about 2 years after the first moon landing, citizens read the leaked Pentagon papers showing that the Johnson administration had been systematically lying about the Vietnam War. People tuned in nightly to the hearings about the Watergate break-in and subsequent cover-up. There was also a series of congressional reports detailing CIA malfeasance both at home and abroad. And in 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded, in contrast to the Warren Commission more than a decade earlier, that there was a high probability that there had been a conspiracy to kill JFK. Allow me to just emphasize high probability. So these are the revelations that helped fuel a wider shift in conspiracy thinking since the late 1960s. People went from a belief in external enemies, such as communists, to the suspicion that the American state itself was conspiring against its own citizens. End quote. Fair enough. Governments lie, but so do conspiracy theorists. This is why we have to rely on actual evidence. And fortunately, in the case of the moon landing, we are literally spoiled for choice with the evidence. But let's get back to Bill Casing, where this all started. So 7 years after the first moon landing, and amidst all this controversy in America, Bill Casing finally decided that it was time to tell the world about what he knew. And he did what everybody else does when they have an incredible story to tell. Sell a book. Why not just come out with the proof to show people, hey, watch out, people are lying to you? Why not come out with this information for free when you can make a decent chunk of change talking shit? Now, how the fuck he knew the US government and NASA had this plan to hoax the moon landings is anybody's guess. But he said he had inside knowledge of a government conspiracy, and this source seems to change every fucking time the story is told. There are 3 different ones I know. The first one is the people working at Rocketdyne building the F1 engines said these engines are not going to take people to the moon. Despite the fact that hundreds, if not thousands of scientists and mathematicians have actually calculated that not only do these rockets have enough power, they also have enough fuel and oxygen to take people to the moon. And no one's ever been able to come out and show their calculations proving that these rockets and these engines could not actually make it to the moon. So that's pretty weird. I wonder why that is. The second source is apparently from a memo written by the head of NASA addressed to the head of the Pentagon. And somehow a guy that worked at Rocketdyne, not NASA, not the Pentagon, managed to see this memo. Did he photocopy the memo? No, of course he didn't photocopy the memo. And as for the third and final source, well, there is apparently video of Bill Casing saying this. I just couldn't find it because the world-leading moon landing denier has copyright struck all of those fucking videos. So that's pretty suspicious. I sense a cover-up. But Bill Casing himself said that he got this idea from a homeless heroin addict and a Vietnam War veteran. Just to be clear, that's the same guy. So yeah, not looking good. Now, most of the claims that people make today about the moon landings being hoaxed can be traced back to Bill Casing's book. So I'm not sure which source is the actual source, but to be fair, neither are the conspiracy theorists. But the memo seems to be the one that they like the most. And the whole memo thing is very, very confusing because there are so many gaps in the logic. Now brace yourself because I'm about to play a clip of the world-leading moon landing denier speaking on the Joe Rogan Experience, explaining this whole memo thing.
And then I'm 14 years old, and I see Bill Casing, a former Rocketdyne employee who worked for NASA for 6 years on the Apollo program with high security clearance, only second to von Braun, who says, look, I edited a memo from von Braun to the Pentagon warning them they are not going to make the goal. There's only a 1 in 10,000 chance they can go to the moon on the first attempt.
And what year was this?
That was back in 1966, I think.
Okay, so there are a multitude of problems here. Firstly, where is the memo? Why didn't Bill Casing make a photocopy of it? Secondly, why does somebody at Rocketdyne have this memo? These conspiracy theorists want to say that not all of the 400,000 people who worked on the Apollo program had to know that they were going to fake the moon landings. Only a select few people would have to know. So then why would you tell Rocketdyne? And then why would a technical writer have to edit a memo that is quite clearly very easy to understand? Or was the head of the Pentagon just fucking stupid? So again, I don't understand why this memo ended up at Rocketdyne when Wernher von Braun was the head of NASA. And the NASA building and the Rocketdyne building are 2 separate buildings. The next issue is, how the fuck did Bill Casing see this in 1966? Because he left Rocketdyne sometime around 1962 or 1963 to go and sell dental products. So there's a lot of problems here. But let's just give the moon hoaxers the benefit of the doubt this one time and say that they just misread the date. Because, you know, reading is hard. Numbers especially. Numbers are really hard. So maybe Bill Casing saw the memo in 1963. Fair enough. And let's just say for the sake of argument that maybe Wernher von Braun didn't actually think they could reach the goal in time, landing a man on the moon before the decade was out. That doesn't mean that they faked the moon landings. Maybe he was just expressing his concern like, we need to hurry the fuck up, maybe give us a little more money. And even if Wernher von Braun said that we couldn't land somebody on the moon with the first attempt, there's a 1 in 10,000 chance of that, the number 11 in Apollo 11 tells us that 10 things happened before that. But again, I suppose numbers are just really hard. Now, in case you didn't know this, Apollo 8 and Apollo 10 both orbited the moon with crew inside the spacecraft and Apollo 10 even practiced landing. The lunar lander separated itself from the command module, then the two pilots inside the lunar lander lowered themselves to about 14.4 kilometers above the lunar surface, mapped out the area that Apollo 11 would land, and then they climbed back up again, reconnected to the command module, and returned to Earth. This was famously known as the dress rehearsal, and it literally laid the groundwork to make it possible for Apollo 11 to land. The only thing left to do was to actually land on the lunar surface safely, which they did on July 20th, 1969. And ultimately, that is the point of Bill Kaysing's book. He thought that NASA could not safely land a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s, as JFK had promised, so they only sent astronauts into orbit around the Earth. And then all of these conspiracy theorists then argue that NASA staged the moon landings in a film studio and that there are telltale signs on the footage and photos that give the game away. Like what exactly? Like the fact that NASA, India, South Korea, Japan, and China have all sent satellites up to the moon and captured proof of the Apollo 11 landing site. And not only do all of them match up exactly, but these photos that Neil Armstrong took while on the moon match up as well. As you can see here, Buzz Aldrin is carrying the passive seismic experiment, and in this photo, he is busy setting it up. Now, if we go back to the satellite image, this one was taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was a product of NASA. You can see that there are tracks right here because Neil Armstrong walked over there to take a photo of Buzz Aldrin. And if everything lines up correctly, we should see a crater behind Buzz. What a fucking surprise! We see a crater behind Buzz. Now again, this Apollo 11 landing site has been corroborated by 4 other countries as well. And I will say this because I'm not here trying to bullshit anybody. I don't have a book to sell and I'm not trying to get on the Joe Rogan Experience. But the clearest and best image is probably from India's Chandrayaan 2. Unfortunately, we just cannot see the tracks, the footprints in the Chandrayaan photo. However, in my opinion, the best and most undeniable piece of evidence that man walked on the moon is Chandrayaan 2's photo of the Apollo 12 landing site. So the first photo that I'm showing on screen here was taken by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. You can very easily see the footprints left behind by the astronauts. At this time, nobody had sent a lunar rover up into space. There were no little remote-controlled robots either. The only way to produce these tracks was with feet. Fortunately, when Chandrayaan 2 passed over the Apollo 12 site, the lighting from the sun was perfect and they were able to pick up the footprints. And if these two photos line up, we know for sure that people walked on the moon. What a fucking surprise! The two photos line up. Now, just as a little bit of overkill, I want to show you this clip from a channel called The Everyday Astronaut.
What's really cool about these images from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is you can compare these 21st century photos to video and images taken during liftoff from the moon of these missions, and you can literally align them and confirm that they're identical. Let's take the liftoff of Apollo 16, for example. It has great contrast and it's easy to see lots of detail as it ascends. Its pitch-over maneuver also shows the descent stage and some footprints as well. So we can overlay an image shot from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and compare them. And look, they're identical. Nothing has changed since there's no wind or atmosphere to disrupt the lunar soil. I just absolutely love that something orbiting the moon today produces images that still correlate precisely with what was shot during the Apollo program.
And just like that, the moon landing debate is finally over. I'm just kidding, of course. These lunatics are gonna say these photos are fake or that India is in on the hoax. So, if they are fake or India is in on it, prove it. And I don't mean just say it's Photoshop or come with conjecture or say I heard from a guy who knows a guy that works at the Indian Space Agency and he said it's all fake. I mean actually prove it. And good luck with that, because it's been 3,000 years already, Gandalf, and no one has ever been able to prove that the moon landings are fake. Now I could just end the video here because in my opinion this definitively proves that the moon landings happened. But I fucking love the Apollo moon missions. And this whole moon landing conspiracy theory is a good opportunity to look into the minds of conspiracy theorists. Now, because I know people are going to comment and they're going to say really stupid shit, I have prepared a rebuttal for the argument that they could have just sent an unmanned probe up there, landed it on the moon, taken photos of the surroundings, and then rebuilt that exactly in a film studio on Earth. So to that, I ask, how in the blue hell were they supposed to have accomplished that with the degree of accuracy that we see in the photos, when satellite images back then looked like this? Even Apollo 11's broadcast looked like shit. So how could they have possibly done that? Also, if this was done by a robot, where did the supposed rover go that drove around on the moon doing this? And why didn't it leave any distinct tracks behind like Apollo 15, for example? You can see the double lines here indicating a vehicle, and the solid lines indicating disturbed lunar soil or regolith by the astronauts. Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 didn't have a lunar rover or a moon buggy thing. So, therefore, there are no moon buggy tracks. And surely NASA would have known that at some point in the future, some space agency somewhere would have gotten a satellite or a probe up there that could fly over the landing sites and capture this. So faking this would not only be impossible, but would also be fucking stupid. Because at this time already, the Soviets had sent 2 probes to the moon. One deliberately crashed onto the moon's surface, and the other was able to orbit the moon and capture the first satellite image of the far side or the dark side of the moon. And of course, it looks like shit. It's impressive, but it looks like shit. So in my opinion, NASA sending a satellite up to the moon to capture the area that they supposedly want to land, and then somehow accurately rebuilding that back on Earth, is impossible. But not only rebuilding it would be impossible, matching the footprints and the tracks and where the experiments are placed and all of that other bullshit would be impossible as well. And couple that with the fact that now several different countries have flown over the landing sites and taken these images, we now have third-party evidence that finally proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that NASA did what they claimed to have done. The images show the lander, they show the experiments, they show the tracks left behind by Neil and Buzz, and their photos from the Apollo missions line up precisely with the topography of the moon and the satellite images from other countries. This would have been utterly fucking impossible to line up perfectly like they are unless they actually landed on the moon. Boom! Debunked. Now that I've delivered on my promise of 100% debunking the moon landing conspiracy, I kinda wanted to look a little deeper into what exactly is happening here. In people's brains, that is. Why do so many people believe this kind of shit? While researching the moon landing, I came across a horrifying statistic. Did you know that apparently on average, 1 in 4 people believe the Apollo moon landings were hoaxed? About the same amount of people, on average, believe that the cure for cancer exists, but is being hidden from the public. About the same amount of people also believe that viruses are produced in government labs to control our freedoms. About the same amount of people also believe that Bigfoot exists and that Barack Obama is the Antichrist. And I'm sure this won't surprise you either, but about the same amount of people, on average, believe in ghosts. Now this one might actually surprise you, but apparently about 2% of Americans definitely believe that the Earth is flat, and about the same amount of people as that believe that the Holocaust never happened, despite the sheer amount of evidence that it actually did and the complete lack of evidence that it did not. I found this quote from Apollo 17 astronaut Harrison Schmitt. A lot of truly weird beliefs exist in society. If people decide that they're going to deny the facts of history and the facts of science and technology, there's not much you can do with them. For most of them, I just feel sorry that we failed in their education. End quote. Now, I spent a little bit of time wondering about why this is, why do so many people believe this kind of shit, and the simple answer is, I don't know. But I think that coming up with bullshit is easy, so to prove how easy it is to come up with conspiracy theories, I've come up with my own conspiracy theory about conspiracy theories. And my conspiracy theory suggests that conspiracy theorists just don't want to believe in things like the moon landing. It is a choice, because if this was simply a matter of asking questions to find satisfying answers, these conspiracy theories would not exist, because the answers and proof is out there. In the case of the moon landing, since there is a grand total of fuck and all evidence that the 6 landings were faked, moon landing deniers have to resort to finding little clips that are taken completely out of context to push this narrative. Here is probably my favorite example.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. It's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and And that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
At the time of writing and recording this clip has 50,000 likes and 12,000 comments. And I can only describe the comment section as a wasteland of willful ignorance. There's a couple comments in here quoting exactly what Buzz said after the clip ends, but of course everyone just ignores that because they don't give a fuck about what he's actually saying, because it doesn't fit what they want to believe. Now, instead of just reading it, I am going to show you what he said.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. In the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going. Money is a good thing. If you want to buy new things, new rockets, instead of keep doing the same thing over, then it's going to cost more money. And other things need more money too. So having achieved what the president wanted us to do, and then what thousands, millions of people in America, and millions of people around the world. You know, when we toured around the world after we came back, the most fascinating observation was signs that said, we did it. Not just us, not just America, but we, the world, different countries. They felt like they were part of what we were able to do. And that made us feel very good.
Now tell me, how the fuck can you interpret that as Buzz Aldrin, the second man to ever walk on the moon, saying that no one ever walked on the moon? You have to be a special kind of stupid to misinterpret something like this, considering this 8-year-old girl's question was,
why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
To which of course Buzz eventually says, money. It was expensive and they achieved their goal. Even JFK said during his speech about putting a person on the moon that it is going to be extremely expensive.
To invest some $200 million in plant and laboratory facilities, and to direct or contract for new space efforts over $1 billion from this center in this city. To be sure, all this costs us all a good deal of money. This year's space budget is 3 times what it was in January 1961, and it is greater than the space budget of the previous 8 years combined. That budget now stands at $5.4 billion a year, a staggering sum, though somewhat less than we pay for cigarettes and cigars every year. Space expenditures.
Smoking's bad. Okay.
So it's about at this time that I had an epiphany. Arguing with moon landing deniers is pointless, and it's not because nothing will ever convince them that one of the greatest achievements in the history of mankind actually happened. It's because they don't want to believe it, because there is nothing for them to gain out of believing it. For me, I think it's inspiring and it's a showcase of what people are actually capable of. For deniers, it's about how much money and attention can I generate. As a practical example of this, which headline here do you think would be a bigger story today? Scientists confirm that NASA moon rocks are actually moon rocks, or scientists confirm that NASA moon rocks are actually calcified dog shit from Earth. It's a no-brainer. Drama, controversy, and calcified dog shit makes money. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Money. Now, I got a bit carried away with the whole psychology thing, and what I did was I identified 3 distinct groups of moon landing deniers. Grifters, greencoats, and curious minds. Now, the first group, Grifters, are the people peddling this moon landing hoax shit. In my opinion, they don't actually care if the moon landings were faked or not. I'm not even sure if they really believe it was fake, but what I am sure about is what they really want is to convince you that it is fake so they can get your attention, sell you books, get traffic to their websites, and get paid money. Essentially, they are just salespeople, and what they are selling is white, hard, calcified dog shit. Here is the proof of that. Bart Sabrell, the leading moon landing denier in the world and the guy that Buzz Aldrin punched in the face for calling him a liar and a coward.
Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself. Away from me. You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
If you watch any podcast this guy appears on, may God have mercy on your soul, but you'll also quickly realize that he seems to just be reciting a pre-rehearsed script, which is not a bad thing in and of itself. The bad thing is that this guy is completely shut off to the idea of having a conversation about it with anyone that can answer any of his questions. And when people do explain things to him, he just says that they're lying. He also said that he's not interested in debating anyone except for one of the astronauts or like the big cheese of NASA or something.
We thought it would be a great idea to have you debate somebody on this. I don't know, have you ever done a debate on this with anybody?
No, to me, that would be like debating if the sky is blue. It's blue, and they did fake the moon landing. I bet my life on it.
What did he say?
And I bet my life on it.
So the people normally they propose to debate me are victims of the deception, which I have no interest in beating up someone who's a victim. I said find somebody who's a perpetrator, either one of the astronauts or a NASA administrator, and you did. Here he is.
Here I am. So Charlie Duke,
now that may seem quite wow at first, but if you feel like torturing yourself, just watch this whole video. You'll realize very quickly that many of the things Bart brings up as proof that humans never walked on the moon have nothing to do with the astronaut Charlie Duke that he is supposed to be debating. For example, he says that the guy that designed the Saturn V rocket said 15 years before Apollo 11 landed on the moon that we would need 3 rockets to get to the moon.
All right, this will be good for Charlie to see. Charlie, watch this one.
Here to reveal a plan for a trip around the moon is the chief of the guided missile development at the United States Army's Redstone Arsenal, Dr. Werner von Braun.
A voyage around the moon must be made in 2 phases. A rocket ship taking off from the Earth's surface will use almost all the fuel it can carry just to attain a speed great enough to balance the pull of gravity. Unpowered, it will then keep circling the Earth in an orbit outside of the atmosphere. This is the first phase. However, if we can refuel the ship in this orbit with fuel brought up by cargo rocket ships, it can set out on the second phase, the trip around the moon and back.
So 3 people just said, von Braun said it twice, that you have to make ferried fuel trips to have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit. You had him say it on camera. You had Elon Musk say it, and you had a rocket scientist building rockets for NASA saying it.
So, Charlie, what do you make of that video of von Braun saying that you would need to refuel in Earth orbit to get all the way to the moon? And because he said it would take all the fuel in the rocket to get that orbit around the Earth, and then you would need to refuel again before going to the moon.
I've never heard that before. Actually, they built the Saturn V.
And what a perfect answer that is. Because as Charlie Duke said, they built the Saturn V. The shit that Werner von Braun is talking about here is not the Apollo moon missions. The Saturn V rocket was a 3-stage rocket, and what does Werner von Braun say here?
A voyage around the moon must be made in 2 phases.
Now this is just a perfect example of either purposely misunderstanding or twisting the narrative to suit their belief. But to just show you why this is a stupid argument anyway, I'm sure that back in the day when the first computer was built, some guy said it would be impossible to one day hold one in your hands. And today, we all have one in our fucking hands. Some of you are probably watching this video on one. So the answer to Bart's question is simple.
Things become more fuel efficient over time.
Technology improves. And Werner von Braun was not talking about the Apollo missions. He was talking about something completely different. What he was actually talking about were the calculations of the necessary amount of propulsion for a direct moon flight. which was deemed economically impossible because he was talking about a much bigger expedition. 50 people for 6 weeks on the moon, including a tank for moving around and the construction of an underground base there. Sent in one direct flight. The Saturn V rockets were 3-stage rockets, so they jettisoned dead weight as they went along. So how does this thing that Wernher von Braun said apply to the Apollo missions? It doesn't. And let's just be clear about something here. Charlie Duke's job was to land on the fucking moon, not to study everything Wernher von Braun said. But a person like me who has a little more free time on his hands than opposed to, an astronaut, can actually go and figure out why Wernher von Braun said this. It also helps that I had a little more preparation than the ambush that was set up against Charlie Duke here. Now, in the cases where Bart actually brings up things that Charlie Duke can answer, and does answer, Bart just says he's lying. So what the fuck was the purpose of this discussion?
I was on the moon for 3 days.
Well, you said you have top secret
wait,
clearance.
Just a minute. And I picked up 200, I think we picked up a couple of 100 pounds of moon rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought them back. They've been analyzed. They're moon rocks. And so I don't understand the purpose of this discussion. Why are we going back and saying Apollo was a fake?
Why does an Apollo astronaut have top secret clearance?
I didn't have top secret clearance.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that.
We had nothing in Apollo that was classified. I did have a clearance from my military time when I was before NASA, and I did have a top secret clearance then.
Okay.
So what the fuck was the purpose of this discussion? So all I can think of is the title. NASA Apollo astronaut finally faces off against #1 moon landing skeptic. And as you can see, this video did very well on this man's channel, so the podcast host makes a nice chunk of change, and Bart Sabrell gets that sweet, sweet attention he is starving for.
We are famished, yes, famished, we are precious.
Yeah man, this video is a fucking disgrace, and Charlie Duke did not deserve to be treated this way. There is a comment in here that described it perfectly, and I already said it. This was not a debate, this was an ambush. Now like I said, there is no proof that the moon landings did not happen. So these people got to resort to finding clips and taking them out of context. And I'm going to just start off with the best example of this. So this is Reed Wiseman. He's an Artemis astronaut, and Artemis 2 is planning on actually going back to the moon very soon.
4 months ago, an astronaut for the Artemis program saying this is going to be the first time we send humans to the moon. He even says before it, you got to pay attention. You may not like this, or words to the effect that the other guy said.
This is going to be an odd answer. It might land wrong, but I'm going to try anyway. This is the first time we're going to send humans to the moon. This is the first time we're going to send humans to the moon. This is the first time we're going to send humans to the moon.
What did he say after that? You cut it out. What did he say after that?
Well, he went on talking, and they passed the microphone back and forth.
Yeah, but how do you know?
Have 3 hours.
How do you know he didn't? How do the viewers know that he didn't say in 53 years or something like that? Like you just.
Oh no, he didn't. You can find it.
We'll take your word for it, I guess.
Okay, we'll take your word for it, I guess.
And as you can see, Bart just cuts the fucking clip here. And amazingly, the podcast host actually calls him out on this. But then, unfortunately, says, okay, we'll just have to take your word for it then. When you don't actually have to do that, because the whole clip of Reed Wiseman is online. So this is why I have the opinion that these kinds of people don't actually care whether or not the moon landings actually happened. All they care about is convincing you that it didn't happen. Because literally in the next second from where Bart cut this clip, it makes complete sense why Reed said what he said. And that's another reason why I'm actually completely convinced that Bart never actually watched this conference. He never actually watched this whole clip. He probably just saw a short of it somewhere and decided, yeah, you know what, I'm going to use that. And I can prove that because Reed actually goes on to talk for 1 minute and 31 seconds.
Well, he went on talking, and they passed the microphone back and forth.
No, they didn't. They didn't pass the mic back and forth because they each literally had a microphone mounted and attached to the fucking table in front of them. So they didn't pass shit around, but they each took turns answering questions, and in this case, Reed answered last, and then spoke continuously for 1 minute and 31 seconds. These are two things this guy would know if he actually watched this conference, if he even just watched his own clip. But why? Why bother doing that when you can sit on a podcast like this, blatantly lie, and then 1 out of 4 people will believe you? Because they want to. Not because they can see with their own eyes that you are fucking lying to them, but because they love the taste of white, hard, calcified dog shit. So let's just watch this clip of Reed Wiseman for ourselves.
We've been to the moon in Apollo, and so when we would go into...
Oh, sorry, my bad. That was actually the wrong clip. This is the one I actually meant to play.
Well, now I have to follow your lead. That was an excellent answer as well. I want to bridge. This is going to be an odd answer. It might land wrong, but I'm going to try anyway. This is the first time we're going to send humans to the moon, and we're going to have humans in low Earth orbit. That is awesome. Like, we should, as humanity, we should take a brief moment to go, that's awesome. One of the things that we most asked for and look forward to is we are going to do a crew conference between Integrity and the International Space Station, the crew that's up there.
So clearly Bart needed to cut that clip at that exact moment because the astronaut is clearly saying the first time there will be astronauts in orbit around the Earth and around the moon at the same time. So that is 100% proof that this guy is full of shit. Now, if you had the patience to listen to all the 1 minute and 31 seconds of things that Reed was saying, you'd even hear him explain and clarify why he said this might not land. He clearly starts off by saying, I want a bridge. Then he stops his train of thought. Then he says, this is going to be an audience. This might hit, this might land wrong. And then he goes on to say everything that we already saw him say in the clip. Clearly, what this man is trying to say is he wants Artemis to be a bridge to further exploration, to further space missions in the future. Let's hear him say it for himself.
When we talk about what is our legacy, I don't want to look 5 years or 10 years in the future. I want to look 100 or 200 years in the future. And honestly, this is where I thought this might land wrong. I hope we're forgotten. 100%. If we are forgotten, then Artemis has been successful. We have humans on Mars. We have humans out on the moons of Saturn. We are expanding in the solar system. We have robotic precursor missions going out. We already have spacecraft outside of our solar system. Maybe we've invented something that we never even dreamed of, and maybe we inspired some kid somewhere, and maybe that's our footnote. We inspired Susie or Johnny to do what they did. That would be magical.
So that's awesome. And I wish nothing but the best for Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four here. And you know, going into space is dangerous, so I hope the worst thing that happens is they just come home with superpowers. But anyway, there are tons of examples like this from moon landing deniers, and I feel like I have to debunk the most popular ones. So the next egregious example is an out-of-context clip of the NASA astronaut Kelly Smith. And let me just preface this next one by saying that this isn't so much out of context as it is blatant manipulation. So how about this time we play both clips side by side so that you can spot the difference for yourself.
This video he's about to play is from 2014 during the build up to the Orion missions, right?
Mm-hmm. D14.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Oh no! What a surprise! Bart has cut some parts out again. And if this is the #1 moon landing denier in the world, this moon landing conspiracy is hopeless. So what the fuck did Bart cut out here?
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Bald fraud!
Now clearly, Kelly Smith is saying that they need to test the equipment. Let me repeat that. Test the equipment, because the equipment has changed since the Apollo missions and has been upgraded to modern tech. And they're not using the same old analog shit that they used back in the late 1960s. And the newer shit that they're using today is more susceptible to radiation. So it's a good idea to test the equipment before you put somebody into the space shuttle and send them through the Van Allen belt. It's the same reason people test cars by crashing them into walls. You have to check it's a new model and they are safety standards. People's lives are at risk. This is not rocket science now. This is just common sense. Why is this so hard to understand? I mean, do you remember OceanGate? Now how the fuck did that happen? Because James Cameron went down to the Titanic 33 times and nothing happened to him, so how the fuck did this one implode? Maybe if they would have tested the thing, they would have known it wasn't safe. So it's just nice to know that when you get into a spacecraft, the radiation's not going to eat your equipment. You're not going to be stranded in space. I mean, God forbid you actually test something to make sure it's safe for people. Now, speaking of the Van Allen belts, because people love to talk about these things so much, Charlie Duke, sitting here across from Bart Sibrel, went through the Van Allen belt, and he is still alive today at 90 years old. But of course, Gollum here just says that he's lying about going through the belt, because how else would he sell any copies of his book Moon Man if the moon landings actually happened? And here's one final example to prove my point that these people truly don't care if the moon landings happen or not. They just do all of this for money.
Additional rockets to tank up in low Earth orbit. I didn't know that. And I'm like, well, how many rockets do we have to do that with? And they're like,
Pause.
6. And then I start, because I...
Who is this?
He's a rocket scientist building rockets for NASA.
What's his name?
I don't know.
That's would be important.
That
to know.
that guy, he's a YouTuber. He has a channel called Smarter Every Day.
You're literally citing a guy, but you have no idea who the fuck he is or what the fuck he's talking about. They're talking about reusable rockets. Reusable rockets are a completely different story to a single-use rocket like the Saturn V. So the guy that Bart was showing there is Destin Sandlin. He's the host of the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day, and no, he didn't directly work for NASA. However, he did work as a professional aerospace engineer at the Redstone Arsenal missile testing facility in Alabama until about 2018. According at least to the information I could find. So he's smart and he knows his shit, but he didn't work for NASA. And if this is the same argument again of having to refuel rockets like Elon Musk said and Werner von Braun said in 1954, people need to understand that the Apollo missions were very different. They were not thinking of reusable rockets like Elon Musk. They were not thinking of giant expeditions to the moon like Werner von Braun. All they were trying to do was put someone on the moon and bring them back home. That is it. The Apollo astronauts only walked on the moon for a few hours. These other missions these guys are talking about are considering different options like reusable rockets and staying on the moon for longer, meaning that they need to carry much more weight with them. During the Apollo missions, they counted every fucking gram of weight. Did you know that they left bags of fecal matter on the moon before they ascended back up and connected to the command module again? Because every single gram was considered. So reusable rockets and single-use 3-stage rockets are a completely different story. But again, this is just common sense. If an 8-year-old girl can understand this, in my opinion, you really have to be trying to purposely misunderstand the stuff because it's quite easy to follow. And that's why I believe that it's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of choice. So, why did Bart Sibrel choose to start believing this conspiracy theory?
I was given $1 million.
Of course you were.
You bald fraud!
Now, another funny example he brings up is a NASA insider he claims to know. Never gives the guy's name away, of course, but he says this guy says that the Apollo missions were bullshit. And then he asks, why would a NASA astronaut lie? What the fuck are you talking about? You've literally made a career out of accusing the NASA astronauts of lying.
Right? Why would a NASA astronaut lie?
Well, I'm sick of this fucking guy already, so let's just put the final nail in the coffin here. Bart copies most of what he says from Bill Casing. And where did Bill Casing get his idea from? We've got the Rocketdyne people that probably don't exist because these calculations have been proven to be real. We've got a memo that doesn't exist and probably wouldn't have been in Rocketdyne anyway because it was from Werner von Braun, the head of NASA, to the head of the Pentagon. And then you got your third option, the only one we can't rule out. He got his idea from a homeless heroin addict and Vietnam veteran. Now, like I said earlier, apparently there was video of this. There was apparently video evidence of Bill Kaysing himself saying that. But interestingly, Bart Sabrell copyright struck all of those videos, and I couldn't actually find the video of Bill Kaysing saying it. But the heroin addict thing is apparently canon.
At this point, I was going to play the video that I've got of Bill Kaysing saying what Bill Kaysing says. However, that video originally came from a channel called Deadpool 69 Special. And I went onto his channel whilst I was editing just to get a little screenshot of the video title and the details, and the video's no longer there. So I messaged Deadpool and asked if he'd deleted the video, and he responded saying he'd not. Instead, it's now been reported for copyright by Bart Sabrell. So I'm not going to play the clip, just in case they try and remove this video as well, but the video is available elsewhere if you want to go and find it. Deadpool has sent me a screenshot of the copyright takedown claim to show that it has actually been removed because of Bart Sabrell's copyright. And I have also found a website article from several years ago that actually quotes what Bill says in that clip.
Dave McKeegan, what a legend. So the quote is, John Grant, a homeless heroin addict and Vietnam vet who bonded with writer Bill Kaysing over a mutual contempt for the system, suggested that Kaysing could use his influence as a writer to undermine the government. And here we go. Why don't you write something outrageous, like we never went to the moon? No wonder Bart copyright struck all these videos. Now, if this video is still out there somewhere, Bart's done a pretty good job of hiding it because I couldn't find it anywhere. So anyway, there's the Grifters. Now, the second group of moon landing deniers are the Greencoats. Some might just call them trolls or conspiracy theorists, but I think the term Greencoat is a little more accurate. Now, Greencoats are the kind of people that Grifters prey on. The kind of people who will believe just about any conspiracy theory because, as a former conspiracy theorist themselves put it, thinking that you have the secret information that could save the world makes you feel powerful. And I'm also sure that in a lot of cases, they believe the stupid bullshit for attention and because they're just paranoid. And if it's not just paranoia or the need for power or the need for attention, it's some other deep psychological need that this stuff is fulfilling. Or they themselves are trying to get in on the grift. Now, for reference, Greencoats also typically believe shit like the earth is flat, the cure for cancer exists but is not public, and the Holocaust never happened. So in essence, Greencoats could be considered the vocal minority. Now, the reason that grifters prey on the vocal minority is because they're usually emotionally charged, highly engaged, and willing to amplify narratives that match their pre-existing beliefs or needs. The grifters then, who are then telling them what they want to hear, are able to cultivate a loyal audience from these people, and they provide them with both financial support and an amplified social media reach, which makes whatever movement they think they have appear larger. Now, it also helps that Greencoats are the least likely people to do any actual research at all. And if by some miracle they actually do, their research is simply listening to other conspiracy theorists who regurgitate the same shit that they already say themselves, and are therefore living in an echo chamber, or as I referred to it earlier, the wasteland of willful ignorance. Case in point, the comment section on the Buzz Aldrin short. They just completely ignore the fact that the girl asked why they'd never been back to the moon, and of course would never bother finding the whole video to see that Buzz and the girl had already been talking for 7 minutes. And at 2 minutes 29 seconds, Buzz Aldrin says, "We did land on the moon."
The moon, and then practice everything but landing. And then a very fortunate person with many things going right in my life gave Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Buzz Aldrin the opportunity to make an attempt to make the first landing. And all of us want to succeed, and we did. And that's why I'm here.
What a fucking surprise, right? And some douchebag has the audacity to make this comment. Mark my words, they will confess on their deathbeds, otherwise they won't be saved. This is obviously a troll or somebody just looking for attention, because this comment was made 4 months ago as of recording this, so according to basic Steiner math, It was posted in about October, November 2025. Neil Armstrong, the first man who ever walked on the moon, passed away in 2012 and never once ever fucking said that the moon landings were fake. However, I doubt that some of the people who say the moon landings were fake even know that Neil Armstrong is dead, because they don't bother to do any research or don't even hear any news like this because they are just living in the wasteland of willful ignorance, just listening to other people exactly like themselves talk about how much they love the taste of white hard calcified dog shit. So, these people are green codes. Now, if you've never played Minecraft before, green codes are villages that are useless and add no value to society. In fact, if you're trying to make an iron farm, green codes actively prevent that. And if you're wondering, does this old grumpy bastard the Mystorian play Minecraft? Yeah, I love Minecraft. So anyway, we've got grifters and we've got green codes. Some of them are one in the same, and most of these people are very happy doing the things that they're doing.
And give the Rock his 90.
yes, my voice breaking again like The Rock. And it's pointless trying to argue with them because they don't want to believe. You could send them to the fucking moon and land them next to the Apollo 11 landing site, and they'll probably still say that the windows in the space shuttles were fucking TV screens and that they've been flown into a TV studio. In my opinion, it's not a matter of belief for these people, it's a matter of choice. They gain nothing from believing it and gain exactly what they desire by choosing not to believe it. And until they make the choice to come back down to Earth, although that may be a poor choice of words, it's probably better to ignore them and hopefully they'll just fuck off. And then there is the third type of moon landing denier, the curious mind. And this kind of person is not even much of a denier. I might get some shit for this, but hear me out. I would prefer to use the term open-minded skeptic or even critical thinker to describe them. They're probably someone who heard in school or whatever that Apollo 11 landed on the moon in July 1969 and it was amazing, and that's about all they know about the moon landings. A lot of people don't even know that there were 5 more moon landings after that. And then sometime later in life, they saw a clip out of context like the Buzz Aldrin one, or the Kelly Smith one, or the Artemis Conference one, or they were just bullshitted by a grifter or a green coat, and now they're not really sure what to believe. But they feel like there could be some truth to this conspiracy, because as we all know, governments lie and do weird shit all the time. So now they're asking questions that they've heard green coats and grifters say before on YouTube channels and in forums and shit, because they are actually looking for the answers to satisfy their curiosity. Now, these people typically aren't moon landing deniers for long, because the answers they seek are aplenty. So, that's who this video is for critical thinkers and for curious minds. So what I want to do is I want to cover the entire story because I think it's a really cool story, and then at the end I'm going to give you 10 more reasons why I think this would have been impossible to fake. I've already shown you my number one reason, the undeniable proof that it was real. I've also explained my number one reason why I think grifters peddle this shit, money. But I also don't really want to cover the things that you've heard a million times before, like the flag waving, or the footprints, or the oxygen tanks, or the fuel to the moon, because there are so many videos on the internet already explaining all of those things. So I'm going to link a bunch of channels down in the description that I think you should check out if you do want some more moon landing stuff. And after you've watched everything, you'll realize very quickly that not only would the moon landings have been completely and utterly fucking impossible to fake, but you'll also start to notice this pattern. And that pattern is that 100% of the counterclaims made by grifters and greencoats have all been completely and thoroughly debunked, which leaves you with the only possibility that man walked on the moon. So if you haven't done this already and you don't want to miss the next moon landing video, subscribe to the channel for part 2, where we're going to cover the space race in just a little more detail. Part 2 is going to have a lot of important information and extra evidence as well, so make sure you don't skip that one. I should have it ready in a couple of days' time, and if it is out by the time you're watching this video, I'll have it linked for you on the end screen. And that's really about it for part 1. Feel free as always to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section, like the video, subscribe for part 2 of course, and I'll see you all again soon when we cover the entire Apollo story. Thanks for watching.